When my phone rang that morning, I had no idea it would shatter everything. The voice on the other end was trembling. My mom had been in a terrible car accident. I didn't even stop to think. I started packing with shaking hands, grabbing whatever I could find. My mind was racing, my heart pounding so loud I could barely hear myself think. I called Ryan as I threw clothes into a bag, my voice already breaking. He was calm, like always. "Don't worry about anything here," he said. "Just focus on your mom." And I believed him. I wanted to believe him. His voice was steady, reassuring, the way you want your partner to sound in moments like this. I felt grateful, even lucky, to have someone who had my back when life flipped upside down. I left the house with trust in my heart, certain that, no matter how hard things got, we were still a team. The drive to the hospital was long, not just in miles, but in weight. I sat there thinking of every childhood memory, of the woman who raised me, now lying in some cold hospital bed. When I arrived, the smell of antiseptic hit me like a wall. I could hear machines beeping before I even turned the corner. And there she was, bandaged and asleep, her face pale under those harsh fluorescent lights. I held her hand and told myself I was exactly where I needed to be. The first few days were a blur of hospital halls, doctor updates, and trying to stay strong for my mom. I barely slept. I just kept thinking about her in that ICU bed, wires everywhere, her breathing shallow but steady. Every hour felt like a battle between hope and helplessness. I'd whisper to her while she slept, telling her stories from when I was little, like that could somehow pull her back faster. Sometimes I'd catch the nurses looking at me with pity, and I hated that. Still, through the exhaustion, I found comfort in thinking about Ryan. I'd picture him making coffee at home, maybe feeding the neighbor's cat like he said he would. He sent a couple of texts, short but sweet, reminding me to eat, to rest. That meant the world to me. Just knowing he was out there, holding down the fort, gave me the strength to keep going. In a strange way, I felt more connected to him than ever, like this crisis was quietly reaffirming our bond. One night, as I sat by my mom's bedside, watching the slow rise and fall of her chest, I caught myself smiling. Not because anything was okay, it wasn't, but because I truly believed I wasn't alone in it. That kind of faith doesn't come easily. It's built over years, through good days and bad, through quiet dinners and stupid arguments. I thought we had that. I thought I could trust him, even with a whole city between us. That belief was my last real comfort. As the days passed, I slipped into a rhythm. Wake up at 6, coffee from the vending machine, check on mom, talk to doctors, call the insurance company, repeat. It wasn't glamorous or dramatic, just the quiet grind of caring for someone you love. I barely looked at myself in the mirror. My hair was always tied back, eyes tired, clothes wrinkled from sleeping in chairs. But none of that mattered. I was doing what I had to do. I was where I needed to be. I kept thinking, thank God Ryan understands. A lot of men wouldn't. Some would complain about being left alone, or guilt-trip their wives into coming back too soon. But not him. At least that's what I told myself. I held on to that image like a safety net. The loyal husband, the solid foundation back home. When friends asked how I was holding up, I'd say, Ryan's been great, without hesitation. I didn't realize I was speaking more out of hope than truth. Looking back now, I wonder when the first crack really started. Was it in the way his messages got shorter? The growing gaps between them? I brushed it off at the time, figured he was just busy or trying to give me space. But deep down, I think some part of me knew something was off. I just didn't want to go there. Not when I was already caring so much. Not when I still believed our love was something I could lean on. I didn't know yet what was waiting for me. It was just after 2 a.m. when my phone buzzed. At first, I thought it was another hospital alert, maybe something about Mom's vitals. But when I saw the notification, my stomach tightened. It was from the home security system. Motion detected. That was odd. Ryan hadn't mentioned going out or having anyone over. I tapped into the live camera feed, expecting maybe a delivery left at the door or some animal triggering the sensor. What I saw made my blood run cold. There she was, a woman I'd never seen before, walking right into my house. Not creeping in, not sneaking around. Walking in. With a key. Like she belonged there. She headed straight toward the kitchen, looked around comfortably, even took off her jacket. My heart pounded as I watched her move through my space like it was hers. I stared at the screen, not blinking, trying to make sense of it. Was this a mistake? Some bizarre coincidence? I wanted to believe that so badly. I called Ryan immediately, straight to voicemail. I texted him too, something panicked and messy. I don't even remember the exact words. Hours went by before he finally replied. Oh, that must have been the neighbor. She dropped something off I forgot to mention. Just like that. So casual, so dismissive, like the whole thing was no big deal. And maybe I would have believed him, if I hadn't seen the way that woman looked around the house. Comfortable, familiar, like she'd been there before. I kept replaying the footage in my head, trying to rationalize what I'd seen. Maybe she really was just a neighbor. Maybe she did drop something off. But then, why didn't he tell me beforehand? Why did she have a key? That part stuck with me, the way she unlocked the door like it was second nature. My gut was twisting in ways I couldn't ignore. But still, I didn't confront him. Not yet. I told myself I was tired, that I needed to stay focused on Mom. That night, I barely slept. I lay there in the stiff hospital recliner, staring at the ceiling tiles, letting doubt creep in like a slow leak. I hated how easily it was filling the room. I thought of every time I'd trusted Ryan without question, every time I'd shared my fears and dreams with him. Was it all just one-sided, or worse? Was he always this good at hiding things? I didn't want to go there, not when I was already holding so much on my shoulders. I told myself I was overreacting. That stress was playing tricks on me. But something inside me had shifted. I started checking the security feed more often, casually at first, just skimming for peace of mind. But the truth was, I was looking for her. Or maybe someone else. I didn't even know what I was hoping to find anymore. Reassurance? Or confirmation of what I was too scared to say out loud? Either way, I was already watching more than I should have been. I didn't mention any of it to my mom. She was already going through so much: pain, surgeries, endless scans. The last thing she needed was to see me unraveling. So I put on my brave face, smiled through hospital visits, brought her favorite magazines, and pretended like everything back home was fine. But inside, I felt like I was walking on a thin sheet of ice, waiting for it to crack beneath me. Something wasn't right. I just didn't know how deep it went. Every time Ryan texted, I read between the lines. Was he being distant, or was I imagining it? The messages were fewer, the words colder. Hope your mom's okay became keep me posted, became long silences. I tried to brush it off, telling myself it was just stress, for both of us. But deep down, I was starting to feel something unfamiliar in our marriage. Distance I hadn't chosen, silence that didn't feel safe, and a growing fear I wasn't ready to name. Still, I clung to the idea that maybe, just maybe, I was wrong. That I was tired, emotional, reading too much into things. So I didn't press him for answers. I didn't bring up the woman again. I just kept watching, waiting, hoping I wouldn't see anything worse. But that quiet dread had already planted itself deep inside me, and it was only a matter of time before it bloomed into something I couldn't ignore anymore. It happened again. Another buzz from the security app in the middle of the afternoon. My stomach dropped before I even picked up the phone. I opened the live feed, already bracing myself, and there she was, a different woman, not the same one from before. This one was younger, dressed casually, carrying what looked like a weekend bag. She entered with confidence, using a key just like the first, walked straight into my home like she'd done it a dozen times. I didn't move. I just sat there in that stiff hospital chair, watching her settle in. She poured herself a drink, took off her shoes, sat on the couch. My couch. I felt numb, like I'd left my body and was just floating above it all. I didn't cry, I didn't scream, I just stared at the screen, frozen in this surreal nightmare. My hands trembled as I rewound the footage, trying to understand what I was seeing. But deep down, I already knew. That wasn't a mistake. That wasn't a neighbor. That wasn't a one-time thing. This was routine, rehearsed, familiar. And suddenly, the silence from Ryan, the shift in his tone, the strange key in someone else's hand. It all connected like pieces of a puzzle I didn't want to finish. My chest tightened. My world narrowed to a single thought. How many women had he brought into my house while I was here, taking care of the woman who gave me life? I spent the rest of that evening digging through the camera history. I don't know what I was hoping to find. Maybe proof that it wasn't as bad as I thought. But it was worse, much worse. Different women, different days, always between certain hours, always when Ryan was home alone. Some stayed longer than others. One even brought takeout. I watched them laugh, lounge on the sofa, walk around barefoot, each one treating my home like a weekend escape. With every clip I uncovered, something inside me died a little more. The disbelief faded into something colder, sharper. Rage. Not the explosive kind, but the quiet, dangerous kind. The kind that simmers. I thought about how Ryan kissed me goodbye the day I left, how he said, "Take care of your mom," how he looked me in the eyes without even flinching. That wasn't just betrayal, it was performance. And I'd clapped for it. Believed every line of his little act. I wanted to scream, to call him, to demand answers. But I didn't. For the first time in days, I felt completely clear. There was nothing left to ask. I didn't need a confession. I had the truth, frame by frame, timestamp by timestamp. And instead of confronting him, I started saving everything. I created a folder, labeled it calmly, organized the files, because I knew this wasn't just going to be a fight. This was going to be the end. That night, as machines beeped steadily beside my mother's hospital bed, I stared at the ceiling and thought about everything I'd just uncovered. The videos, the women, the lies, it was all circling in my head like vultures. But oddly, I didn't feel broken. I felt awake. More awake than I'd been in years. Somewhere in that pain, something inside me had shifted. This wasn't going to be a meltdown. This was going to be a reckoning. I started thinking like a different version of myself. One I hadn't met before. A version that didn't cry into a pillow or beg for answers. A version that quietly made plans. I didn't know exactly what I would do yet, but I knew I'd never go back to being the woman who packed her suitcase with trust. That woman was gone. And the one replacing her was done waiting. Done wondering. Done pretending everything was fine when it wasn't. I closed my laptop, placed my phone face down, and looked over at my mom. She was still asleep, breathing slowly, unaware of the storm building inside me. I reached out and held her hand, the way she used to hold mine when I was scared. I whispered, "I've got you." And for the first time since I left home, I whispered something to myself too. I've got me. I didn't need to confront Ryan. I needed to outgrow him, and I already had the first step in mind. By the next morning, my plan was already taking shape. I started forwarding the videos and photos to a private email account I hadn't used in years, one Ryan didn't even know existed. I labeled each file carefully, organized everything with cold precision. Every lie had a timestamp now. Every betrayal had a face. I wasn't rushing. I wasn't emotional. I was methodical, like I was packing away the pieces of a life that no longer belonged to me. Between hospital visits, I made quiet calls. Found a locksmith back in our city, someone discreet and fast. Then I reached out to a tech guy I once hired to fix our Wi-Fi, the kind who doesn't ask too many questions. I explained exactly what I needed. Locks changed, security codes wiped, new passwords for everything, alarm system, cameras, even the damn smart fridge. I didn't want to just shut Ryan out physically. I wanted to erase every digital trace of him from my space. I told them I'd be back a day earlier than planned. I didn't tell Ryan. I didn't tell anyone. It felt strange, making these moves in silence, like I was ghosting my own marriage. But there was something powerful in that quiet. No yelling, no confrontation, just actions. And deep down, I knew that silence would hurt him more than any screaming match ever could. The morning of my return, I left the hospital with a heavy heart and a sharp mind. Mom was stable, resting easier now. I kissed her forehead, told her I'd be back soon, and walked out without showing the storm brewing inside me. The train ride back felt surreal. The countryside blurred past the window, but my thoughts were razor clear. I wasn't going home, not the way I'd left it. I was going back to reclaim something, myself. When I arrived in the city, I went straight to the locksmith. The jingling of the new keys in my hand felt like armor. Next stop was the tech guy, who greeted me with a knowing nod. Within an hour, my entire digital system was reset. New alarm code, new garage remote, new router. I even changed the password on the camera system, the same one that had shown me everything. That house was no longer ours. It was mine now, and I wasn't leaving room for ghosts. I didn't feel nervous. I didn't second guess any of it. I pulled into our driveway like I was walking onto a battlefield I'd already won. The porch light flicked on, responding to my presence like it always had. But this time, it felt different, like it was greeting the rightful owner. I unlocked the door with the new key, stepped inside, and closed it behind me. No hesitation, no fear. Just the steady breath of someone who had finally taken their power back. The house was still, the kind of quiet that feels sacred. I walked through each room slowly, like I was reacquainting myself with a place that had been held hostage in my absence. The living room still smelled faintly of his cologne, but even that would fade. I opened the windows, let the evening air roll in, and stood there for a moment, just breathing. For the first time in weeks, I felt calm, not numb, not broken. Calm, present. I took my time, wiped down the kitchen counters, lit a candle. I even changed the bed sheets, not because they were dirty, but because I wanted no trace of the past touching me while I slept. Every drawer I organized, every cabinet I cleared out, felt like peeling back a layer of someone else's lie. This wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about restoration. I wasn't cleaning for him. I was cleansing for me. And when everything was in place, keys changed, passwords reset, house reclaimed, I didn't celebrate. I didn't cry. I simply sat down at the kitchen table with a cup of tea, the same way I used to when life felt steady. Only now, it wasn't just steady. It was mine again. And even though Ryan didn't know it yet, the locks weren't the only thing that had changed. The woman inside this house, she wasn't waiting on anyone anymore. He showed up that evening, right on cue, like clockwork. I was in the kitchen when I heard the faint jingle of his keys, followed by the unmistakable sound of confusion. The door didn't open. He tried again, and again. Then came the knocking. Sharp, insistent. I didn't move. I just watched him through the security camera on my phone, standing there with that look. A mixture of disbelief and growing panic. That's when I sent the message. This house no longer belongs to liars and cowards. Don't bother trying again. Short, direct. No room for negotiation. I saw him read it, watched his face tighten, watched his jaw clench like it always did when he didn't get his way. He knocked harder, even called my name, like I might suddenly appear and forgive everything with a hug. But I wasn't that woman anymore. That woman lived here once. She loved him. She trusted him. But she left the day she realized she deserved better. He stood there a few more minutes, trying to keep his cool, probably hoping I'd open the door, cause a scene, give him something to argue with. But all he got was silence. And I know now, silence has a weight. It has power. It speaks louder than any screaming match ever could. He walked away eventually, slower than he arrived, still trying to process what had just happened. But I had nothing left to give him, not even a goodbye. I watched him from the same phone that had exposed everything. The irony wasn't lost on me. Technology had destroyed the illusion, and now it was protecting my peace. I saw him stand at the edge of the driveway, looking back one last time, like maybe the house would change its mind. Like I would. But I didn't flinch. I didn't waver. I just lowered the volume on the feed and placed the phone face down on the table. That chapter was over. I didn't cry. I thought I might, but the tears never came. Instead, I felt this strange lightness, like I'd been holding my breath for months and finally let it go. No more lies to untangle. No more pretending I didn't notice the distance. No more sharing my life with someone who thought loyalty was optional. I made a decision that day, not just to remove him from my home, but to reclaim every part of myself I had sacrificed in the name of us. The next morning, I blocked his number. I called a lawyer. I made a list of everything I needed to change. Documents, bank accounts, passwords, even the emergency contact at my doctor's office. It was a long list, but each item felt like progress, like movement, like healing. I wasn't rushing through the pain. I was walking through it, step by step, and leaving behind every piece of a life built on his lies. By the end of that week, the house felt different, lighter, quieter, safer. I started opening windows in the morning again. playing soft music while I cleaned, making coffee just the way I like it, strong, with a splash of vanilla oat milk. There were no more strange scents on the pillows, no more second-guessing his whereabouts. Just peace. Not because he was gone, but because I had finally chosen to stop letting him return. I sat at the kitchen table one morning, steam rising from my mug, and realized I hadn't checked the cameras once since he left. Not because I didn't care, but because I no longer needed to. That's how I knew I was free. The silence in the house no longer felt tense. It felt earned. I wasn't waiting for a knock. I wasn't listening for footsteps. I was simply home. For the first time in a long time, this space was mine, in every way that mattered. I took a sip of coffee, glanced at the sun filtering through the curtains, and smiled. Not a dramatic smile, not one for show, just the kind that comes from knowing you made it through. I didn't need closure from him. I didn't need revenge. I had something far better: clarity, strength, stillness. And as I sat there, wrapped in my own quiet morning, I knew one thing for sure. He would never walk through that door again, and I would never leave it open.